Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Tonight, UFO experts who conduct serious research have a whole vocabulary to describe their formative science. One term you may not be familiar with is flap. A flap occurs when UFOs appear in waves over a specific area for a specific period of time. The appearance of flaps has sinister overtones for ufologists who believe these recurring sightings have a secret and perhaps deadly agenda. All around the globe, there are certain places that seem to act as natural UFO magnets. These areas are attracting flaps, or waves of UFOs, that may last for years. There are hotspots in Russia, Europe, and in South America, the heavily populated city of Sao Paulo has had hundreds of sightings by thousands of people. These flaps have prompted researchers to try to find a common pattern or motive.
Anybody who studies this soon becomes almost desperate to understand a pattern or to impose some purpose on the phenomenon.
In the United States, sightings are widespread and occur almost nightly. America's #1 hotspot is Gulf Breeze, Florida. Ralph Fuller's sighting in 1988 was among thousands of others, but Ralph was the first to capture a UFO on tape.
I don't know what that is out there over the Gulf, but we just had a real bright light. I think it might be a flying saucer.
They seem to spawn one another. The two went to 3 and 4, and ultimately, over a matter of maybe a couple of minutes' time, there were 10 of these lights out over the Gulf. And they seemed to be in some semblance of a formation, but still in all, there was no movement whatsoever, no noise, no sound, nothing of that sort. You see nothing but the Gulf of Mexico. The nearest point of land would be the Yucatan Peninsula. And there were no boats or anything of that type in the area either.
These are sky watchers, amateur UFO enthusiasts in the Gulf Breeze area who go out almost every night of the week with cameras and binoculars in search of UFOs.
What makes a good sky watching area, for one, is a good field of view. That is, being able to have an unobstructed view of the skyline, and ideally you'd like to be away from city lights, but that's not always possible. So we go out in the evening and take our chances, and you may have a relaxing evening out under the stars, and then you may be blessed with a sighting. We just never know. We've seen amber-colored lights, 8 lights in a perfect circle gliding and performing maneuvers in the sky. We've seen rows of lights, suggesting lights perhaps around the periphery of a craft.
There are UFO hotspots all over the country. Gulf Breeze, certainly, but also here in New York State near a little town called Pine Bush. And the hotspots here near Pine Bush, according to one scientist, have a very special meaning. Bruce Cornett is a geologist who lives near Pine Bush, New York. After numerous significant sightings of UFOs near his home, he began studying the area with an electromagnetometer.
What I found is that these magnetic anomalies are in specific patterns. And all of the UFO activity, the landings, the sightings where they are taking off and landing, when we've been able to identify specific areas, are associated with these magnetic anomalies.
Are you suggesting that nature created homing devices deep in the ground?
No, I think that it's a reverse. If we are dealing with an alien culture and they are doing something underground, they're using the natural magnetic anomalies to disguise their own magnetic signals.
Are you saying there are, or could be, aliens in the Earth?
I'm not saying it's certain. It is definitely possible, based on what I've seen.
Do you realize how that sounds?
I don't like the idea just simply because it is so outrageous. Then I would have to also add some of the photographic data that I have that shows, at least in one particular case, a UFO going up at a 7-degree dive right down into the ground, what appears to be.
Ellen Crystal has been investigating the Pine Bush flap since the early 1980s. In her book, Silent Invasion, she documents hundreds of UFO encounters in the area. Working independently, her findings seem to coincide with those of Bruce Cornett.
These ships kept coming back to the same fields night after night after night, the same places in the woods. Also, we had experiences where we clearly heard somebody drilling in the woods at night, and this is private property. It seems that there's something being constructed underground, such as an artificial installation of some type.
One of the most well-documented sightings in history occurred in Pine Bush on August 6, 1992.
We think in excess of 1,000 people may have seen 2, 3 ships or 4 ships where I took video, and all the police departments across the whole lower New York State area was simply inundated with just hundreds and hundreds of calls.
We looked over the top of the trees, and there was this object there out of nowhere, this great big object. It was about 300 foot wide, the size of a football field hanging over your head, and about 300 foot off the ground.
We looked at our clocks, and we had 3 battery-running clocks, 2 in the kitchen and 1 in the living room. And for some strange reason, all 3 clocks were stopped at the same time.
Just about everyone in Pine Bush has seen a UFO. In his barbershop, Butch Hunt hears a lot of stories from eyewitnesses about strange alien encounters.
About 60% of the people around here, I think, have seen something. And some talk about it and some don't. They're just afraid to talk about it. Afraid of ridicule and intimidation. The one that we saw was over at Red Mills Bridge. And there were 6 of us in the car. But it just so nice. It just glided right over the trees. And we just got out and stood there. Just gawked at it. And nobody said a word. But the whole episode was probably 30 seconds. But it was huge. It was bigger than the bridge.
UFOs are cited by all kinds of people, including the most credible professionals that you can find. In addition, when we have multiple witnesses who all tell the same story, then we can say, well, that's probably a pretty good report. If we have enough detail in a given report that we can rule out all of the normal explanations, it's not the planet Venus, it's not the aurora borealis or a meteor, it's not an aircraft that we can name, then we are talking something fairly credible.
No one disputes that there have been unidentified flying objects sighted around the world. Where ufologists and skeptics differ is in how they interpret these sightings.